Giving a reading or just reading once about these lectures or these, about these philosophy or books like this, it does not take us much far. There are two kind of readings, there are two kind of understandings. One is going from point A to point B, like this. From point A, we are going to point B. It is more like swimming, like we are swimming from point A to point B. So when you go through 5 aphorisms or 10 aphorisms or 20 aphorisms on a stretch, okay, we are going from point A to point B. That's okay. But then there is going, this is swimming. Then there is diving, you know, going from A1 to A2 to A3 to A4. When you go through again and again, you dive more deep into the subject. The understanding of the subject becomes more in depth. You go to the another level of understanding. Then next time you will go to the another level of understanding. And you will always find that there will be always something new. Even you are reading the old thing, even you are reading the thing which you have already read, but you will always find something new in the same text, in the same words, which you will understand at that particular reading, in that particular reading, or in that particular, if you are listening or hearing in that particular hearing. So this diving is very important, going into the depth. This gives us the experience. So going many times, because uh, I get this question that, oh, we have already read Organon. Reading is a different thing. Understanding or diving into the depth of the organ is a different thing. Reading does not take us much far. Like I have this routine that every year now I'm taking the this lectures in English, and then previously I have taken the lectures in Hindi also. So then, okay, I go through the Organon whenever I have to take. But even before that, I had this routine that every year, like I will take some few days where I will read the Organon once. And I'm telling you this thing, that this has given a very depth, very deep understanding of this thing. That how the philosophy, it basically sets your platform, the platform on which this building is basically built, the philosophy of how it is happening or what we have to do. It is very important. That concept of homeopathy is very important. The more deep that concept goes, the more improved understanding of homeopathy comes from that thing. Okay. So with that said, we will start with the today's today we will be doing from aphorism 48 to aphorism 53. So till aphorism 47, we have gone through the therapeutic law of nature, where we have understood how the dissimilar diseases do not have the power to cure the diseases, and how the similar diseases can cure the diseases. We have understood the dynamic concept of the vital force. We have understood the totality of the symptoms. We have understood how the ideal cure should be done. We have understood the importance of the patient in comparison to the patient's disease. So all these concepts are very important, that they should be very strongly embedded into our thought process. Whenever we are seeing case, all these concepts should be in that background, so that we can see the case homeopathically. So today we will go ahead to aphorism 48. So neither in the course of nature, as we see from all the above examples, nor by the physician's art, can an existing affection or malady in any one instance be removed by a dissimilar morphic agent. So he says that Dr. Hahnemann is saying that if we have a look at the course of the nature, or if we look at the physician's practice, the way we give the medicine, the way, there is no instance, no such instance that the disease was removed by a dissimilar morphic agent. Whenever the disease was removed either naturally or by physician some medicine, it was removed because the medicine acted in a similar way. In a similar way means that the medicine has the power to create a similar disease. So there was no instance where the dissimilarly producing disease and more an artificial agent which produces dissimilar kind of disease has cured any natural disease, be it ever so strong. It can be ever so strong, the dissimilar morphic agent, but solely by one that is similar in symptoms and is somewhat stronger according to eternal, irrevocable laws of nature, which have not hitherto been recognized. Dr. Hahnemann is saying that till now, these laws have not been recognized, although they have been noted. In many writings, they have been noted by the physicians, but they have never recognized these things. They have never understood this thing, all that was happening in the front of their eyes, but they never give importance. They never looked into it that why this is happening. If they would have looked into it, homeopathy could have been discovered many, many years before Dr. Hahnemann. So, aphorism 49, we should have been able to meet with many more real natural homeopathic cures of this kind if, on the one hand, the attention of observers had been more directed to them, and on the other hand, if nature's hand had not been so deficient in helpful homeopathic diseases. So Dr. Hahnemann is saying that we would have seen more natural homeopathic cures of like this if the attention of the observers, the people who have written all these recordings, like we have done in the previous aphorism in the 41, 40, 39, 38, all these examples which we have seen there. He said that all those observers, all those physicians who were noting down these things, if they have given more attention to this thing, but they didn't give it. And on the other hand, if the nature, because he was giving the example of nature, the existing similar diseases like of the smallpox, of the itch, of the measles, how they basically removed the old blindness or the onanism or the convulsive state of some few patients. So he's saying that if the nature's hand has not been so deficient, in nature there is a very limited source of natural diseases which can cure other diseases. We will go to that part in the next episode. So if he said that there are 2 points. The most important is that the observer of the sorry attention of the observer was not directed. They didn't paid much attention to this kind of process. Aphorism 50. Mighty nature herself has, as we see, at her command, as instruments of effecting homeopathic cures, little besides the miasmatic disease of constant character. So he's saying that he's talking about the second point of the aphorism 49, that this mighty nature, although the nature is mighty, but even mighty nature have very few instruments, have very few natural medicines by which it can cure the already existing chronic diseases. Like there is the itch, he has given the example of the itch, the measles and the smallpox. Morphic agents, which as remedies are either more dangerous to life. Now, this is the second point of these kind of remedies, because you know, like I have always said, Dr. Hahnemann used to think much, much before, much, much ahead from where he was at that point. He knew that when I'm going to give these examples, the people will say, okay, if there is some problem with the patient, we can induce the itch or we can give a virus of measles or we can give a virus of smallpox to the patient, if these are the things which can cure the patient. But then he's telling us about this thing that, okay, these agents, which are natural agents, they have the character to cure few diseases. But the problem is that as remedies, they are more dangerous to life. They can remove those diseases. They can remove those symptoms of blindness or of the convulsions or of the epilepsy. But when they are induced, they are more dangerous to life than the previous diseases and more to be dreaded than the disease they are to cure, or of such a kind, like the itch, that after they have affected the cure, they themselves require curing. If you induce the itch, okay, it can cure few diseases, but then you have to give a treatment to cure the itch. They themselves require curing in order to be eradicated in their turn. Both circumstances that make their employment as homeopathic remedies difficult, uncertain, and dangerous. So these instances that they are very dangerous to the life, and then if they are induced, then they will require eradication of themselves also. We have to give medicine to eradicate them. So these 2 points, we cannot use them as a mean to cure, but they give us a guidance. They give us something more important. What is that is more important? And how few diseases are there to which the man is subject that find their similar remedy in smallpox, measles, or itch? And there are very few diseases which have their answer in these kind of remedy. Then there are so many diseases which these natural diseases cannot cure. Hence, in the course of nature, very few maladies can be cured by these uncertain, hazardous homeopathic remedies. And the cure by the instrumentality is also attended with danger and much difficulty. For this reason, that the doses of these morphic powers cannot be diminished according to circumstances, as the more doses of medicine can. So that is the main point, that we cannot moderate the doses, we cannot moderate the potency, we cannot moderate the power of these naturally occurring phenomena. If a measles is occurring naturally and it is removing some disease, we cannot control the power of this measles which is occurring naturally. So we cannot induce it. We cannot use the virus to put into, because we cannot control it. But we can control the dose of the medicine. We can control that how small the dose should be, what power of the dose of the medicine can we give. But the patient afflicted with an analogous malady of long standing must be subjected to the entire dangerous and tedious disease, to the entire disease of smallpox, measles, or itch, when its turn has to be cured. Even if you are inducing this thing, for example, there is only one symptom of, like, there was an example of a blind patient, but that blind patient has to go through the whole process of measles or smallpox. All the other symptoms has to come on him, and then this will be removed. So he has to go through the entire dangerous and very violent and very painful process of the disease to get his one symptom removed. And yet, as is seen, we can point to some striking homeopathic cures. By this lucky occurrence, also more many incontrovertible proofs of the sole therapeutic law of nature that obtains in them. Cure by symptom similarity. He says that although these are the obstacles where we cannot use these kind of diseases to remove the other diseases, but from here we can take one point. We can see one thing which is very important and very striking, that the diseases can only be cured by those agents which have the power to produce similar diseases. Similia similibus currenter. Cure by symptom similarity. So all these instances, they give us this very important law that a disease can only be cured when a medicine is acting on the patient in a way that it has a symptom similarity. That when given on a healthy being, this medicine produces the exact same disease. So aphorism 51, this therapeutic law is rendered obvious to all intelligent minds by these instances. He said that all the intelligent people, just by giving this few examples, if you give them these few examples, the therapeutic law can easily be understood. And they are amply sufficient for this end. And they are sufficient. He said that just to make someone understand that um, what should be the law to cure a patient, if you give them these examples, they are sufficient to understand that only those agents can produce, or sorry, cure a disease, which agents have the tendency to produce the similar symptoms. But on the other hand, see what advantages man has over crude nature in her happy-go-lucky operations. How many? Thousands more of homeopathic morphic agents has not man at his disposal for the relief of his suffering fellow creatures in the medicinal substances universally distributed through the creation. He says, okay, but these naturally occurring diseases we cannot use. Aphorism 50 says about the hazards, the dangers behind the using of smallpox, measles, or itch as a homeopathic medicine. We cannot use them. It is because of the danger which they possess, because we cannot regulate their dosage. But he says, Dr. Hanuman says that there are so many other medicinal substances which are distributed throughout the creation, which are available in this nature, available in this creation, which a man can use homeopathically to cure all the diseases, thousands of the diseases, and relieve the suffering fellow creature, relieve the other human beings. In them, he has producers of diseases of all possible varieties of action. In these medicinal substances, the arsenic, the merxol, the lachesis, the silicia, sulfur, phosphorus, so many medicinal substances which are created in the creation, they have the answer to all the diseases. There is possible varieties of action for all the innumerable, for all conceivable and inconceivable natural diseases to which they can render homeopathic aid. If we can use these substances, if we can use these medicinal substances, these medicinal agents, then we can get an answer to all the natural diseases which we have present now or which will be present in the future also. Whose power, when their remedial employment is completed, being overcome by the vital force, disappears spontaneously. And then using these kind of substances, we have another advantage that we can control the dose. We can give a small dose so that when they have employed their power, when they have produced whatever they have to produce, their power can be overcome by the vital force, and they do not produce any kind of dangerous state on a human being spontaneously without requiring a second course of treatment. Like in itch, if you induce itch, okay, that disease will go, but you have to give a second course of treatment for the itch. So that thing is not required here. You don't need to give a second course of treatment for measles, like in the case of measles or in the itch. As soon as the action of the remedy it diminishes, it just disappears. All the effect which it has to produce, it disappears without requiring a second course of treatment for its extirpation, like the itch. Artificial morphic agents, which the physician can attenuate, subdivide, and potentize. These are those agents which we can attenuate, we can decrease their power, we can divide it, and we can potentize them, which is not possible with the itch or the measles or the smallpox or the cowpox. Almost to an infinite extent. There is no extent to which we can attenuate or potentize them, and the dose of which can diminish to such a degree that they shall remain only slightly stronger than the similar natural disease they are employed to cure. So disease can be decreased. So you know this thing which he's saying here right now. This was a very mind-boggling thing. Even Dr. Kent writes about this thing in his philosophy. He gives a case. Dr. Kent, when he came, because you know, when you're coming into homeopathy from allopathy or some pathy like that, where you have been giving crude drugs, it is very, very difficult to, uh, understand that diluting the medicine will increase the effect, because throughout the life you have been doing like, okay, if I give 50 mg of the tablet, it produces this much effect. If I give 100, it produces this much effect. If I give 200, this produces this much effect. So increasing the material dose have been increasing the effect. So in homeopathy, it is completely different. That decreasing the material component increases the action of the medicine. So this is a very mind-boggling thing, very much out of the Newtonian physics, which we have been studying about. The more action, the more reaction, the more action, the more reaction. Here it is, the decrease the action and the reaction will be more. So completely opposite thing. So Dr. Kent describes about this thing. He said that when I entered into the homeopathy, I always used to give, like 6x. It was a last potency which I will go for. Beyond that, I cannot imagine that, there is anything left in the medicine. But he had heard about some doctors who were practicing with the potentization and dilution of the dose and, going to the 30th potency. So he also made a 30th potency of few medicines, among which was a podophyllum. It is a very interesting case which he writes. A podophyllum 30 dose, but he never gave. He had already prepared, but he didn't had the courage to give this medicine, because in his mind was that it is too diluted, it is too small, it might not work. So he always went through the 6x. Then there was this epidemic in the area where the children were going through some diarrhea and vomiting, and very bad death deaths were happening, infantile deaths were happening. So he found that the genus epidemicus was podophyllum. So he gave podophyllum to the patients who were coming to him, and they were getting very much better. So one day, a lady brought a patient, and the patient, he describes that, if you have a look at him, it was a horrible case of a child that, looking at him, you will find that, okay, he is going to die. There is no chance that this child is going to survive. So he said that, I had this thing in mind that he's not going to survive. So I said that, okay, let's try podophyllum 30. At least let's give it a chance in his this thing. There might be many other thoughts, but he got this thing that, okay, let me try it. And he took podophyllum 30 and he gave it to the child and told the mother to take him back. So in the back of his mind, he was like, this child is not going to survive. The next day he comes, so there is no news of the child. And, in the back of mind, it was like 99% sure that the child is gone. So out of the anxiety, he went for the rounds, like he was going for the rounds of the patient, asking everyone in their home how they're doing. And he passed from the house of that child. He didn't inquire about the child, but he saw that there was no this wheel on the door, because in those days it was a custom that if there is death in the house, they will hang a black cloth outside the house so that the people can know that the family is grieving. So when he went by, he didn't saw anything like that. So he, became more confused, because in his mind it was very sure. Okay, then he went back, and after a few days he again passed from there, and the, I think, grandmother of the child was outside. So he stopped there and he asked that, how is the boy? He said, he's completely okay. He's completely okay. That you gave that one dose, and after coming after a few hours, he was completely okay. He was eating, he was drinking. The next day, he was completely well. And Dr. Kent, he was very surprised. And from there, he, came into this, no, that no, the 30 works. So if the 30 can give such a good, because he compared that with 6x, I had to repeat few doses and then it would take 2 days, 3 days. But with 30, on the same night, the child became better, although the child was in a much, much worse state in comparison to the other children. So from there, he started getting this, from that experience, that belief came in himself that no, the more you, then he also went out to potentize to 100 potency and then 200 potency. And and then he writes about these potentization, that more I went into the potentization, the more I went into a more smaller dose, I got more better results. I can cure the patient from more interior to exterior level. So because when we are coming from that concept to this concept, that potentize almost to an infinite extent, and the dose of which can diminish to such a degree that they shall remain only slightly stronger than the similar natural disease they are employed to cure, it becomes difficult to take a grasp of that thing. But when you go with the experience, when you see this thing, then you start believing in it. No, this is true. The more diluted it is, the more potentized it is, the more power it has to go at the deeper levels of a patient's constitution. So that in this incomparable method of cure, there is no necessity for any violent attack upon the organism for the eradication of even an inveterate disease of old standing. So when we give the medicine in a way, okay, so he said that when you are giving a medicine which is curing all of the natural disease with a minimal dose, without having any kind of other bad symptoms, so this method of cure is completely incomparable. You cannot compare it with anything. There is no violent attack on the organism. There is no that the patient is getting weak with the medicines. New symptoms are coming with the medicine. The cure by this method takes place by only a gentle, imperceptible, and yet often rapid transition. Very gently, it cures the patient. Imperceptible. No perceptible process is basically felt by the patient that he has to go through some painful process or this. No, imperceptibly. He cannot even perceive, he cannot even feel that the medicine has acted so gently on him. And yet, often rapid transition. There is very quick, very rapid transition from the tormenting natural disease to the desired state of permanent health. So, from the tormenting state, he goes to the desired state of permanent health. So, in this thing, in this aphorism, Dr. Hahnemann is trying to tell us that we cannot compare this kind of process, this kind of method with any other, because it is a completely, it acts on a completely different plane. It is not acting on the chemistry of the body. It is not, sorry, it is not uh, working on the physiology of the body or the biology of the body. No, it goes more deep at the center of the life. It is working there. It is curing from that place, so that from where everything is coming, that growth axis, that should get better. Aphorism 52. Surely, no intelligent physician, after these examples, as clear as daylight, can still go on in the old ordinary system of medicine, attacking the body as has hitherto been done in its least diseased parts with allopathic medicines that have no direct pathological homeopathic relation to the disease to be cured with purgatives, counter irritants, derivatives, etc. He says that any physician who is intelligent, after having these examples, after reading these examples, which are clear like a daylight, They cannot go back to the ordinary system of medicine. They cannot go back to the same process where by the medicines you have to attack the body in a way with some purgatives or counter irritants that you are taking away the strength of the body, you are taking away the initial energy of the body with the medicines, and thus at a sacrifice of patient strength, inducing a morbid state quite heterogeneous and dissimilar to the original one. With these medicines, we are producing a dissimilar state, like we have done in the first part of the example. That if you create a very strong dissimilar state, the natural disease will get suppressed for some time. And that is what is seen in the medicines. If there is some skin disease with a very strong sulfide or some mercurial this thing, when it is applied or some steroid is applied, it gets subsided because we have given a more stronger dissimilar disease to the body. And as soon as that disease is removed, the patient stops applying any ointment or any cream, the original disease will come back. And thus, at a sacrifice of and it happens at the sacrifice of the patient's strength. Because when a dissimilar disease is produced, it takes away the very important energy, very important vitality of the patient. And dissimilar to the original one, to the ruin of his constitution by large doses of mixtures of medicines, generally of unknown qualities. And most of the part, we don't even know much about how these medicines are working. What are the effects of these medicines? We only read about it. We don't experience about these things. The employment of which can have no other result, as is demonstrated by the eternal laws of nature in the above and all other cases in the world in which a dissimilar disease is added to the other in the human organism. For a cure is never thereby affected in disease, but an aggravation is the invariable consequence. So he says that in the world, in eternal laws of nature, there is not even a single example where a dissimilar disease has cured the another dissimilar disease. It has never happened. But what is seen is the aggravation of the original disease. That is always seen. But an aggravation is the invariable consequence. Therefore, it can have no other result than that either, because according to the process of nature described in first example, the one is first example, it is the Roman one. The older disease in the body repels the dissimilar one wherewith the patient is assailed. The natural disease remains as it was under the mild homeopathic treatment. If the allopathic treatment is a mild one, the natural disease remains as it is. By it ever so long continued, the patient being thereby weakened. And the natural disease, it keeps on progressing at its normal speed, and the patient is getting weakened. Or because according to the process of nature described in the second example, the new and stronger disease merely obscures and suspends for a short time the original weak dissimilar one. Then, if we use a strong allopathic treatment, if we give a strong allopathic medicine which can suppress the symptoms, what happens then is by the violent attack on the body with strong allopathic drugs, the original disease seems to yield for a time. Like I said, like I was telling that when you use a steroidal cream on the skin disease, it subsides for a time to return in at least all its former strength. But when it comes back, it comes in a full strength and many times with increased area of the body. Or because, according to the process of nature described in third, two dissimilar diseases, when both are of a chronic character and of equal strength, take up a position beside one another in the organism and complicate in each other. Now then there is a third process where the two dissimilar diseases, they are of equal strength and they complicate the disease. One takes one portion, the other takes the other portion of the body. In those cases in which the physician employs for a long time, if these strong medicines are employed for a long time, morphic agents opposite and dissimilar to the natural chronic disease, and allopathic medicines in large doses. Such allopathic treatment without ever being able to remove, because it cannot remove, that is a final thing. Even if we are giving very large doses, very strong doses, even for a longer time, we know that a dissimilar disease cannot cure the natural disease. So, without ever being able to remove and to cure the original dissimilar chronic disease, only develops new artificial diseases beside it. So, from there, the medicinal disease, the symptoms of the medicine, they start getting more permanent. They start taking a different seat in the patient, and they complicate the whole chronic disease in its process. And as daily experience shows, only renders the patient much worse and more incurable than before. So when these kind of artificial diseases are produced, the patient becomes more incurable. The disease becomes more or difficultly curable. It becomes more difficult to cure it. It takes more time. The rapidity of the cure, it usually, starts becoming more. It will take more time to cure such patients. Aphorism 53. So true mild cures take place, as we see, only in a homeopathy. The true cures, they only take place in a homeopathic way, a way which, as we have also shown above from aphorism 7 to 25, in a different manner, by experience and deductions, is also the true and only one whereby disease may be most surely, rapidly, and permanently extinguished by the art. Okay. So he's saying that homeopathic way, when you give a medicine in a homeopathic way, only then a disease can be permanently and rapidly extinguished. For this mode of cure is founded on an eternal, infallible law of nature. Because this mode of cure, this principle of cure, is basically based on the infallible law of nature. So, when a principle is based on a law of nature, it is always going to work. With the right understanding, with the right medicines, with the hard work, we can make it happen more frequently in our clinics. We can make it happen because I always said that these are the words. This is the experience of Dr. Henneman. He's telling about his experience. Now, whether these words become true for us or not, it depends upon us. If we do as the way we are told to do, then yes, one day we'll come and we'll start seeing all these things happening in front of us. I have so many patients. Uh, Recently, this example came to my mind because recently one of my patients, a lady of around 62 or 63 years old, she was very, very, very surprised because I told her that you should stop your uh, allopathic medicine for hypertension. She was taking it for 25 years. Now, after the medicine, her blood pressure was becoming better along with the other symptoms. There were many symptoms. So the blood pressure was becoming normal. So we were telling her to decrease the dose, decrease it. And then finally on that day, I told her to stop it. And she was very surprised. She said that when the doctor started with it, he told me that you have to take it for whole life. So I was telling her that if you take them, the BP will go more low because now your blood pressure is completely normal. It is being regulated by your body as it should be. You don't need any medicine because now your body is in control of your physiology, of your blood pressure. And she was so surprised that how can this happen? He said that my two of my elder sisters and two of my brothers, we all are hypertensive and they are taking the allopathic medicine and even they are taking the allopathic medicine, but sometimes the blood pressure is not under control. So she was happy also, and she was, a little bit skeptical also, because we have been programmed in that way, by the medical science, by the medical system. I mean, that some diseases you have to take medicine for your whole life. But then when you find that the permanently extinguishing of some disease with these kind of medicine, when it happens in front of you, today I have so many patients who have stopped taking the medicine for diabetes, for the hypertension, for the hypothyroidism. So many have been taking from so long time. So from there, these words, they seem, you start, okay, yes, whatever is written, this permanently extinguishing, because I know I am giving SL. So my medicine does not have anything to regulate the blood pressure, but her blood pressure is being regulated. So that means the body has come to a state of health where it can now regulate the blood pressure, where it can regulate the blood sugar, where it can regulate the thyroid, where it can regulate the other systems of the body. So these things, when we start applying all these uh, principles into our practice, then we start seeing that these things, they start becoming true. We experience these things happening in front of us, because like I told you earlier also, we should start believing in something when we start seeing that thing happening in front of us. There the belief comes, the true belief, the belief which is from, you know the center of your system, not from the mind only. So when we start applying these things, when we start understanding this basic concept of the philosophy of homeopathy, we will have more courage, we will have more um, inspiration to do this thing, because we have been doing practice from so long time. We always see this thing happening, that patients are coming with new and new and new and new systems. They're not getting the right kind of medication, because the basic concept, the basic approach of the medical system is wrong. The dissimilar disease cannot cure a dissimilar disease. It is impossible, because it is not based on the therapeutic law of nature. So, with that said, we will stop here for today at aphorism 53. Next Wednesday, we will continue from aphorism 54. And I think within 2 or 3 weeks, we will finish our our philosophical part of the organon, the theoretical part, which will be finished at aphorism 70. So after that, the practical part will start. At till aphorism 70, it is more philosophical part. It is a part for you to understand the concept behind the homeopathy. Then after 70, the practical application start, that how we have to apply this concept in our clinics. Okay. So I believe within next 2 or 3 weeks, we will be finished with it. If you have any questions, you can send in the group. You can ask them anytime, because questions are very good things. They produce doubt in you, and only doubt can give you clarity. This is a very important relationship. We usually think that doubt is a permanent state. No, if you pursue the doubt, if you go with the doubt, if you because doubt is something which kind of tricks you to find an answer. So if there is no doubt in you, then I always say that if you don't get a doubt on something, then it is difficult to learn something new. For learning, doubt is very important. Okay, so if you have any questions, if you have anything you feel that we need to discuss more, you are always welcome to ask. We can address in the next class before we start with the organ. We can address the questions. So thank you very much.